What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato back holding it down in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for everybody. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Best of noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. A lot going on today between all the basketball last night, horses coming up this weekend. Deion Sanders and Colorado players still tweeting through it right now, I'm sure, as we speak. But Claudia, what else do we have coming up on the show today?
There's a lot to go over. Good thing we have 2 hours. We are going to talk about the fact that it's also never too early to talk college football. Obviously, we're going to get some Irish in there and talk about the lines that DraftKings has out for the upcoming season. From the track to the rink, Eddie Olczyk will join the show to talk Kentucky Derby and Stanley Cup playoffs, of course. We got to get some hockey in there with him. And Kyle knows Minnesota, former Vikings tight end, and T-Wolves superfan Kyle Rudolph will join the show. But you mentioned it, Gojo. We got to talk NBA. The Heat tried to fend off the elimination last night against the Boston Celtics, but they failed to do so. Celtics move on to round 2 with a 118-84 win. A nice gentleman's sweep. What can I say, guys? We're too kind over here. They're going to face the winner of the Cavs Magic series. Cavs up 3-2 on that series. They play tomorrow. Magic, the 4-point home favorite. And you said it before we came on air here, Gojo. Spo looked angry. But to me, wasn't this sort of just delaying the inevitable? We knew the Heat weren't going to make it very far. I think this was a success for them to make it this far without Jimmy Butler.
Oh, man, Dad, you see how quickly the Boston fans, now that they finally got the win over the Miami Heat, are like, oh, no, you guys did such a good job. You overcame such tough circumstances here. Claudia, I'm so proud of you. The penny is so very strong.
Dude, I told you, when I was working out with Spo, I gave him all the credit. I said, you guys are a scary team because of you, this, that, and the third. I told them we were going to gentleman sweep, so I was right on that. But whatever. We were the better team.
Yeah.
I'll give them their flowers.
Yeah. Listen, you are the better team, but that did sound like, oh, that was a cute team we played. That's
you guys tried so hard. That was so good.
Yeah, you guys did. You gave, well, maybe tried, I don't know how much tried last night, but they were missing, 3 starters last night, including Jimmy Butler. It was their 37th different starting lineup. So this is a team. This is one of those teams, that dealt with injuries. We see it in football all the time. There's a couple of mass unit teams throughout the year, and Miami was one of those teams that dealt with injuries. And when you deal with it with your best player, like Milwaukee's dealing with it like right now, as they possibly can get ousted tonight, that makes it difficult, because those are the guys you count on at certain times. So this was a horrific game. There were guys playing at the end of that game. You need a scorecard to know who they were. I mean, it was, I know you've given the final 118-84, but it's 68-48 at half, 98-66 going into the fourth. So this was just never really a game at all. Boston did exactly what they should do. Now, really, the thing for Boston, as you mentioned, they play the Cavs or the Magic next, is getting Porzingis healthy, right? Just making sure the next time he steps back on the court, you feel good enough about not re-injuring, though that's always a possibility, because that would be obviously the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I thought that was probably the only interesting takeaway from last night. I think Shaq at halftime called it other carryover disorder because Derek White still looked like he was in the same mode from game 4 when he was going off, had 25 points last night, was tied with Jaylen Brown for the lead on that team. And so, Dad, that is kind of what you look for, though, is, all right, listen, we know Derek White, played like an all-NBA defensive player this year in that backcourt and had one of his best seasons as a pro, which, again, in no small coincidence because the man finally decided to shave his head and come on home. You look good, you play good, you make your deeper runs in the postseason. And in Derek White's case now, Dad, potentially another big-time option here to supplement some of what they're losing. And Kristaps, again, it's not going to be in the same way, obviously, because Porzingis was supposed to offer you the stuff in the middle and on the block that could change and add that element to this offense. But at the very least now, you've seen in a couple of big-time spots, hey, when you need to put your foot down on the gas, Derek White is absolutely capable of coming to the party and being another guy outside of Jason and Jaylen that can go here and give you meaningful buckets in a big game.
And it's not like, he doesn't need 25, 30 shots to do it, right? He took 13 last night, made 8 of them, shoots over 50% from the field, shoots 50% from three-point land, so it's efficiency as well because you have other players that can score, so the ball is going to get spread around, but the most shot taken were by Brown at 19. So that's the one thing they do have, even without Porzingis, because they've done well at times without Porzingis, but it's different than the playoffs, so there's no really need to go into that, is the fact that they have other players to step up. They have the consistency from those other guys, whether it's at home or on the road, to step up when they need them. They have a number of players, which is why they're considered the best team in the NBA, and I believe still, Claudia, you said favored to win, right? It's them over Denver still, I believe. So there's a reason for that. They have great players, but they have a number of players who can contribute.
Yeah, you had premier depth on one side going up against a team that was down 3 starters on the other side. Look, the Miami Heat shot 3 of 29 from 3 in this game. They shot 10% from beyond the arc. That's, in a night where we saw some teams chuck up a bunch of dirt from the outside, we'll get to the Clippers later on. This was, Claudia, I think the ultimate show of where these teams were. Miami, outside of one game, I think has some serious questions now that they have to answer this offseason. This has been a group that has overperformed and maxed out this roster through the last handful of years and might now finally be getting to the ends of what's capable of with this group.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I said it too after game 2. It's going to come down to whoever makes the most threes. I knew the Celtics were going to win the series, but the way the game would be kept close was on the three-point line. So a little bit different, shooting over 53% for the 3 from Miami in the one game they did win to just making 3. That'll be the difference, like we both said, the Cavs and Magic. Whether it is really either of them, those are 2 of the top defenses. So if they can slow down that three-pointer, then it's going to be a different situation for the Celtics. You mentioned the odds. Yes, the Celtics are still the favorite, plus 130 at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Nuggets still second in the odds at plus 245. Then the Thunder, plus 850. So there's a big drop-off, guys. So the narrative hasn't really changed from what we had heading into this postseason. Celtics, Nuggets still at the top of the board. Senior, let me ask you this, because when I mentioned the Cavs and Magic, both of them bringing a tough defense, do you feel better about this Celtics team going up against either one of them?
Yeah. No, I think they're better than either one of those teams, obviously. That's not a real out on a limb statement. So I think they'll take care of business in either one of them. As you mentioned, both good defensive teams. But as I just said before, Boston has too many good players, right, that they can rely on. If one of those teams tries to lock down one, you have others that can hit. Enough of others, where for Miami, we go back to game 2 when they shot out of their minds on the 3 from, past the arc. We said, well, they can't sustain that, and they didn't. Boston has the ability with other players to sustain if their top players aren't scoring at the rate you'd like. So that's why I don't think Boston is going to get challenged until the conference finals. Probably we think against the Knicks. We'll see if the Knicks can close it out on the 76ers in what has been an incredibly physical series. So we'll see on that. So, yeah, I don't think, even though it's better defense, I just think Boston is too good all the way around to be really challenged too much in this next round. At least I don't think they should be.
Well, Gojo, I want to swing this to you. Jason Tatum put up 16, 12, and 3, so the rebounds were there last night. But I have to say, there is some unrest here in Boston of people watching Jalen Brunson go off and Luka go off night after night. and kind of watching Jason Tatum being okay with letting Derek White have his night and Brown have his. Do you feel a type of way about that? Are we just wrong to feel that way about Jason Tatum, or do Boston fans have a point here?
Well, you know what I think is comparison is the thief of joy. And it's interesting because this is sort of a different version of the same conversation we had for years about LeBron James. And I'm not saying LeBron James, I think, is a well-worn track record that sort of defeats any argument that he wasn't a guy who wanted the ball in the clutch time. It was just he was always going to make the right play versus what you're talking about with Jason, I think, is a little bit more pronounced where he's willing to let these guys kind of go and do most of that themselves, even though he does create a bunch. What I will say is I do think part of the comparison that's always been there, because he's a Kobe system guy, that hasn't done him any favors in this department, because what you see from Jalen Brunson and a lot of these guys is the actual Kobe system stuff where it's, hey, no, I'm taking the ball no matter what, and it's going to go through me. And right, wrong, or indifferent, that's just now how Jason Tatum has gotten down and how he's been growing as a player, as a part of this core that's always sort of been mentioned in tandem. Like, it's always been him and Jaylen Brown. That's never been an individual for that team. And so, yeah, I can understand it, because now that we're getting this again on the big stage from Ann Edwards and from Jalen Brunson in a way that, I don't know, hasn't felt this pronounced in a while, I can get being envious, because at our core, I think a lot of us as basketball watchers, Dad, all kind of lionize that one guy who can just go get a bucket and who wants the smoke. Like, there's something about sports where that's always going to be attractive. And so I get looking longingly at it, even if Jason Tatum is probably still objectively the best player of that group, at least right now.
You want the killer, right? Everybody looks on their team. Who's our killer? Who's that guy? You know, it's been Brunson. It's been Anthony Edwards. Hell, it's been Tyrese Maxey for the 76ers once Embiid got hurt, right? He's been the guy that has done that. And LeBron has caught so much flack. I mean, how many years, I've been doing this. You've been doing this, Mike. We sit here and talk about LeBron. LeBron looks for the best play, not necessarily him taking the shot, and he gets criticized for it. You know what? There's only so many Michael Jordans and Kobe Bryants out there, and still, you look at the percentages, they're going to miss more than they make when you look at it. That's just basketball. It's like baseball as well. You hit 3 out of 10 times, you're going to be set for the rest of your life in money. So I get it. I get you have that thought process, but man, when you have a team where you can spread that around and you can legitimately find somebody on your team that has a better look and is capable of making the shot, the bottom line is winning. Now, that's something that Boston has failed to do with this group. So that's also, I think, where this falls. Hey, we haven't won. Take charge, Tatum, take charge, so we can win. But that's not his style. And B, I think they have enough talent to get it done, though they haven't. So it's going to hang over them until it happens.
Yeah, I think comparison's always going to be his enemy here, because even for a team like Golden State that was predicated on moving the ball in this beautiful version of the game, you still knew, hey, when the game on the line, Steph Curry was going to be the one taking the shot until Kevin Durant showed up, and then Kevin Durant was the one taking the shot. So maybe that comparison's not the most apt. Either way, you know what one is? The late game that we saw last night. Because, buddy, let me tell you, if you want one man going and taking the bull by the horns, I assure you, Luka Doncic, who came out the other night and called his own number and said, I'm letting Kyrie Irving down, Claudia, decided to come out here and really send a message in Game 5 on the Clippers' home court. Good God.
He is a dog. Okay, and I want to talk about the fact, too, that the Clippers were one of the favorites. It was like Boston Nuggets. Clippers were up there heading into the postseason. Now they have the second longest odds right behind the Orlando Magic, and Luka has a lot to do with that, because Dallas now leads this series 3-2. This is impressive not only because it was a 30-point win on the road, but no, it's because Luka entered this game with a sprained right knee, that's the limb, and a bit of a bug as well, and he still dropped 35, 7, and 10 with a cold.
Yeah, it's tough. I can't breathe through nose, so I have to blow my nose every time on. But like I said, it's the adrenaline of the playoff game. It was a big game today, so I know I needed to be locked in very, very 100%. So it's the adrenaline of playoff game, and I like it. I mean, today I think it was a very big game. We win, and now we got to win 1 out of 2. So we got to go back Dallas, play the same way. We know our fans going to be amazing at home, so we just got to win one more. We didn't do nothing yet.
So the sprained right right knee's already tough. And, okay, he had to blow his nose. The way he said it kind of makes you sit back like, really, dude? But having a cold, not easy to run up and down and dominate like you did, GoJo.
And I would say, Claudia, like it showed in the first half of this game. You saw after basically every sequence, Luka coming down, grimacing, spending even more time than usual, chirping at the referees. It looked like it was affecting him early on. And then 14 points in the third quarter later, when all of a sudden he got back to the same brand of bully ball that we were used to. Dad, that was a vintage Luka performance. That was why people were clamoring for him to have a late season chance at winning the MVP over Nikola Jokic, because on his best day, he is an offensive force like very few others in the NBA right now.
First off, I love the fact he took ownership of I'm letting Kyrie down and said I need to play better, because he hadn't been playing like Luka early on. The cold thing is an issue for guys that have to run up and down the court, to not be able to breathe through your nose at all. It can certainly catch up with you. He had said if it was a regular season, he probably would be missing games with the knee, but it's a playoff, so you just don't. That's the way it is. Biggest difference, though, Mike, I'll say, is in football, at least we can blow our nose right there on the field. We don't have any issues.
That is true.
We can get rid of it
it's
right there.
Not rocking on the court doesn't really work the same way there. That's tough.
No, does not.
Fine,
so that's a big plus for the football players, that you can get rid of it right there on the field and not miss a play or have to wait for a timeout. But, again, no Kawhi Leonard in this one yet again. And, we saw Dallas played against them one other time in the playoffs, and it was Kawhi who was big in that series, and now you don't have Kawhi, so that's really hurting the Clippers. Is this going to be you start to talk about, is this going to be the end of Paul George? With the Clippers, is he going to move on after this? So there's going to be questions. We wondered, a team with the aging players on it, how long you were going to be able to be together.
James Harden had 7 points, GoJo. What?
I was going to say,
did he have a cold
really about one
and two broken knees? What? 7 points?
I was just going to say, Paul George's future is somewhat interesting to me, but like the fact that there's reports of Paul George going to the Magic, which would be cool, like him with what Paolo Banchero's already done there. You can interest me some in that, but I think with this Clippers core, the kind of point is, this is a team full of guys who have told us who they are, and we need to believe them, right? And in James Harden's case James Harden is an incredible offensive force of nature. He is a regular season MVP, and he is someone who just, at this point, we have seen over the course of history, cannot be counted on in the postseason to go out there and win you anything of value. He was a part of yet another insane drought from the three-point line. I think the Clippers missed something like 14 straight threes in this game. They were dreadful from beyond the arc. I know it wasn't quite as bad as the Miami Heat, but in this game, they shot 9 of 35 from three, couldn't buy a bucket for the majority of the game. Russell Westbrook was really struggled overall as well, even in his role coming off the bench. But, Dad, I saw this note from Nick Wright over at FS1. James Harden now holds the NBA playoff record for most games with 10 or more shot attempts and 2 or fewer makes, with 10 games like that. Now, part of it's volume, because he's been in the postseason a ton, because he constantly gets his team there. But we have seen him in so many different environments, Dad, where this has failed to come to fruition in a big way, especially when you're down another star and you've got to count on James.
And he's played a little better, right, in this series. We thought, okay, he's kind of stepping up a bit here without Kawhi. But then here you are at home with the ability to take a 3-2 lead, and you throw out this clunker of 2 for 12. I mean, that's been Harden. And that's been why he just, it's the angst along the way when he's on your team, when you get to the postseason, of what he can actually do. And he crybabies his way out of something to get somewhere else. And we all wonder. We were surprised, though, right? He made the move. We said, oh, watch this thing implode with the Clippers. And it didn't. They were doing pretty well. As Claudia had mentioned, throughout the season, their odds were up near the top, after the couple of big-time favorites in Boston and Denver and others as well. But they were in the upper echelon. But he, again, shows what he does in the playoffs, which is when a big-time moment when you need him, he wasn't there. So you got to believe this team, as it's seen, is done, right? Because as I mentioned before, it was actually 3 seasons ago. This was the exact same scenario that Dallas was in, up 3-2. And they ended up losing the last 2 games to the Clippers. But the star was Kawhi Leonard in that comeback 3 seasons ago. He wasn't there. It's probably not going to happen. I can't see, Mike, any way this team is back the way it is. Paul George is a free agent. I definitely see him out of there. Again, unless loves LA, whatever. We know as free agents there's different reasons to do different things, but I would not be surprised at all if he's out of there and this four-man older group is broken up to say, you know what, they're not getting it done now. They're only getting to be a year older, so it's probably time to break up the band.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, and especially it made me think, I thought of this during the game last night because there were shots of a very angry-looking Steve Ballmer on the sideline of that game, watching what could be the Clippers' final game in that arena as he's getting ready to open his nice new basketball palace out here in El Segundo or near that area, and probably wants a team that can get people excited about it. This was supposed to be, to Claudia's point, a team favored to make a deep run into the Western Conference this year, and now that that's not coming to fruition, they might need to start the youth movement for the other team in Los Angeles, who is still firmly the other team in Los Angeles. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. And Dad, it's never too early to start looking ahead to college football season.
No.
Some exciting news on our front yesterday as Notre Dame fans, as now the DraftKings Sportsbook already has odds up early on the spreads for regular season games in college football next year. Interesting ones for our Irish. Notre Dame opening 10-point favorites against Louisville at the beginning of the season. That I believe is one of their first games here. Oh, no, sorry. They open at Texas A&M. That's right.
Nope.
Jesus.
A&M.
Getting 2 points on the road in College Station, which, Dad, I mean, at this point, slots to be their toughest game of the season, at least on paper, by far. You've got USC out of the Coliseum later in the year, but turning over a lot of talent, including the number 1 overall pick. You get Florida State that's losing a bunch of talent to the NFL as well. And so it's a schedule that really lines up well for the Irish and expanded playoff, Dad, to where this has got to be a playoff or bust year for Marcus Freeman in year 3. He said it coming off the spring game. This is probably the most talented roster they've had. And so if Riley Leonard's healthy for you at quarterback and you can go and steal one in College Station in a raucous environment against a coach in Mike Elko who knows this program very well, both as a guy that was at Notre Dame as a D coordinator and then played against them last year as the head coach at Duke, if you can go down there and get a big-time win like that early on, it sets up well for a team that, again, if the quarterback is healthy, has a chance to not only make a run and make the playoff in the expanded year, but actually win games in the playoff for the first time in Notre Dame's history.
Yeah, you mentioned Elko with Duke last year, and Duke was playing Notre Dame tough until Riley Leonard, Duke's quarterback then, rolled his ankle, and that hurt really the rest of the year. Now Riley Leonard is at Notre Dame, didn't play in the spring, still dealing with some ankle surgery, so there's kind of, can he be healthy throughout the year, as there's 3 other quarterbacks in the quarterback room, which you don't expect that to stay that long in the next year or so if guys aren't playing. But and that's the thing, Mike, because it's game 1. It's right at the end of August where they go to Texas A&M. And this is true for any team playing in that first game. Remember, there's no preseason game, so it is literally the first game. You can have all the practice you want and feel like you're ready to go and where you need to be. But when you're fitting new pieces in, and Notre Dame is yet again at the quarterback position, is going to be at a couple of wide receivers position, going to have some new players on that offensive line as well. So you get all the practice you want, but that's the first test, and there's no practice games before that. So that'll be a tough one coming out of the gate. But I agree with you. I think this is going to be one of the more talented teams they have had, maybe save for the offensive line when you had a guy go in the first round and the second round in your tackle. So we will see. And I agree. I think the over-under on them is 10 wins. You get 10 wins. If you lose 2 games, and hopefully they don't, but you lose 2 games in a 12-team playoff, you're getting in. I mean, I think they'll get in even if they have the 2 losses because I think they ended up 14. I can't remember exactly where they were last year, but I think they can get in, depending on if they do have 2 losses, who those 2 losses are against. Obviously, that would make a difference as well. But I do think this is one of the more talented teams that they have. Even, again, they lost Audric Estime as well, but they've always had a deep backfield without question. So looking forward to what they can do. But out of the gate, you always like to see those. Do you, though? I mean, there's some teams that start with a couple of games in the beginning against the FCS teams to warm up and use it like preseason games. And then there are other games, that are big time games right out of the gate.
Well, it gets into that potential good loss category that sometimes happens with teams at the beginning of college football season. Hell, Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman's first regular season game of his career was on the road against Ohio State in a game that they played close and earned a lot of respect, but didn't ultimately win. And so, it's. Listen, as a fan, not what I want to see. No, I want to see us roll up on cupcakes for the first couple of weeks and get a few wins under our belts before we make this trip. Because, man, College Station, Kyle Field, it is hot down there. That team, while they lost a bunch of guys out of the draft or the portal that were talented players on that defense, still has a bunch of holdover guys from that monster recruiting class from a couple years ago. And Mike Elko's a damn good coach, so that's going to be an incredible matchup for those teams to start the season. But, Dad, you mentioned it's kind of a sign of the times around college football. When you look around, we're getting a preview of the future Super League because the SEC Big Ten Challenge going on at the beginning of the season with LSU on the road playing USC, Texas at Michigan, Alabama at Wisconsin. We're leaning all the way into this right now. The fact that Oklahoma, Tennessee is conference games now, it's just very strange to see the changing world of college football laid out before us in so many of these ways. So there's a lot going on with those, Dad, and I think in the changing world of college football, the other thing I thought was interesting about yesterday in terms of all this was the bowl games. Kind of poking their head in and saying another one of the quiet things very loud, because as we've talked about it, we've heard quotes from coaches over the last few years and a lot of other people involved in the day-to-day football operations of college sports right now saying, hey, we'd really like it if all this NIL stuff came in-house and if players actually had a cut of the revenue, because the more business-like it gets for them, the more control they get back. Because right now, all these coaches are dealing with third-party collectives who are kind of associated with the school, and you can kind of promote to it, but it's still another leg in the process that they've got to negotiate when they're used to controlling everything. And now the bowl games, who have come out and are watching the college football postseason model change a ton and are watching players opt out of bowl games, they came out and said again, hey, we'd like to see this happen too for players, because then if there's revenue sharing, there's probably a CBA. And if there's probably a CBA, that means there's terms of the contract now. And one of the terms they would like in the contract is you have to perform certain duties. The quote from the director of bowl games, whose name I can't find right now in this, said if you sign a contract and receive compensation, you're obligated to perform certain duties. In this case, play 12 regular season games and a bowl game, or a bowl game in the playoff. He said that's logical to expect, and it's the way the rest of the working folks work. Now, it's not totally logical because the CBA would require there'd be some negotiation. But, Dad, as the union guy on this show, I was curious from your perspective, as you look at this, this is another indicator to me. When the people in the right powerful places who have the right financial backing keep talking about the same thing, it's going to happen. We're going to get to revenue sharing in college sports. It's going to be pseudo-employment because they all want to dance around that word by couching this as NIL. But do you think this bowl game caveat is something that players could and should care about? He estimated probably 8 players have opted out of a bowl game on a given team in every year. There's still the transfer portal factor and all that. How important do you think that's going to be to college football players to potentially preserve the ability to opt out of these games if they want, knowing the injury risk it still poses for NFL guys?
I think it was Nick Carparelli who said that, the executive director of bowl season, with that quote you said. So it's a couple of ways. From the bowl side, I understand. They're like, listen, we have a bowl game and you have a couple of marquee players. We want those marquee players at the game. So I get it from their side for sure. For a game that, I'm doing air quotes, doesn't count. So one thing and you mentioned that there was no hard number, but it's a guesstimate that 8 players on a team opt out. So that number automatically is going to go down, Mike, right? With a 12-team playoff, now teams, instead of 4, there's 8 more teams in a playoff. So you have a chance to move forward toward a national championship. So I think that will cut numbers down as well. So I get it from their side, trying to get it in writing that say you have to show up. But what you're going to fall into then is you're going to have guys that grab a hammy or grab a calf in practice and say, I can't, because remember, it's not many days after bowl season is over, the title season is over, you have to declare for the draft, let alone the portal that's going to open up. So are you going to risk preparing for the draft? Are you going to risk yourself an injury if you're going to go into the portal and want to go somewhere else? And I get what they're trying to say in the article. It talks about, you're letting your teammates down and this and that. And listen, I get it. You want to be with your team, but the rest of the team understands as well. If you're one of those guys, that maybe is going to hit the portal or go to the NFL or into the draft, that's what's going to happen next. So I do get it from the bowl people's side to try and have the big players show up at the game. And I think the biggest thing is going to be more teams in the playoff is going to cut down the number of opt-outs. But still, if a player doesn't want to play in it, he's going to be able to get out of it by saying he has an injury.
I agree with you there. I do think the expansion of the playoff is going to accomplish some of that, but I don't know. It was still funny to me hearing them all have to walk up to and admit, we think the fans definitely come for the name on the front of the jersey, more on the back of the jersey, but we're really worried about the handful of really good guys whose names on the back of the jersey are definitely the important reason that most people tune in and watch the Pop-Tart Bowl before we start tearing into the mascot, eating it alive.
Cats ready because the Kentucky Derby kicks off on Saturday. And if you need some help navigating the race, our friends at VSiN have done all the research for you. Check out the VSiN's Kentucky Derby betting primer. Whether you're new to the horse racing game or a longtime fan, the VSiN Kentucky Derby betting primer has everything from how to bet horse racing to previews of the Derby and Kentucky Oaks and best bets from the top horse experts. It's all free and available to download for all VSiN subscribers. Head to VSiN.com and subscribe now. And for even more tips and tricks, visit DK Horse at dkng.co/horses. And now it is time to welcome in somebody who knows a little bit about Derby, a lot of bit about hockey, NBC Sports Horse Racing, and Hockey USA Hall of Famer and analyst, Eddie Olczyk. What's going on, Eddie?
Hi, Claudia. How are you? Hi, guys.
Good morning, Eddie.
What's up, Eddie?
We appreciate you joining us here on what feels like the week tailor-made for you. What's it like to be at the center of the Venn diagram as we head into the NHL's postseason rolling along, Derby weekend here? You've got to be on cloud nine right now.
Yeah, Junior. Pucks and ponies, right? At this time of year, there really isn't nothing better in yours truly's life. The excitement level of playoff hockey. And now you have the 150th running of the Kentucky. This will be my 10th year aboard on NBC's coverage, which I can't believe it's been that long. So it's a lot of fun. But you're right. This is you start mixing and matching hockey and horse racing. It gets really exciting. So I've taken a little break from hockey. I was in Denver on the weekend and also in Vegas for a couple of games early in those series. And then I'll be here all week, and then I'll head to, looks like we're on the path for maybe a Game 7, and I'll get back to TNT's hockey coverage on Sunday and find a Game 7. But right now, it's straight the equine athletes over the human athletes while playing hockey.
So let's jump on that first before we get to the hockey. Loved having you on when doing the show at ESPN, and I certainly went with your picks, and it worked out well for me. So who should we be looking for in this race?
Yeah, Mike, it looks a little, the term in horse racing is chalky, meaning it looks a little favorite-y, so to speak. I think there is a lot of pace in the race, a lot of speed in the race. So when you have a race that has some horses that are going to go out there and, put on a clinic, so to speak, on getting out there and trying to get to the lead and go a wire and a wire. Look, this race is 1.25 miles. It's in front of 175 or 180,000 people, and this will never happen again for the majority of these horses running the distance and being in a venue like Churchill Downs, which has just done an amazing job here. So, the favorite is number 17, Fierceness, trained by Todd Pletcher, who's won this race a couple of times. No trainer in the history of the Kentucky Derby's had more starters than Todd Pletcher. Fierceness looks like the real deal. He's a horse that's going to be out there very quickly, but I think there's going to be some other horses that are going to be, running with him. The one thing I will say is that not only you got to worry about the horses and, figuring out this puzzle, but trying to play meteorologist as well. And we're supposed to maybe get some rain here tomorrow, which is Friday for Oaks Day, which kind of puts a damper on everything. So that will have an effect on maybe how the track is playing. And those are things that you have to kind of figure into. And it's supposed to be like a 40% chance of rain on Saturday. So just giving people a little bit of a heads up. But when you have a race that I think has a lot of speed in it, I'm not much of a favorite player, but sometimes you got to take what the track is giving you. The majority of my wagers are going to be around the number 4 horse, Catching Freedom, trained by Brad Cox, who is a Louisville native. This horse is probably going to be sitting somewhere in that 10 to 12 numbers, maybe around the first turn. And Catching Freedom is going to be a horse that I think is going to be able to make one of those big runs. Hopefully, like Rich Strike did. I don't think we're going to get 80 to 1 on that horse, but we're probably going to get anywhere between 8 and 12 to 1 on Catching Freedom. So the faster they go early, and I'll go inside horse racing if I can. If you hear Larry Comas, the voice of the Triple Crown on NBC, if you hear him say, because he will start saying all the horses' names, and then he will give out a time. He will say 3/4 of a mile, right? So 6 furlongs, there's 8 furlongs in a mile. They're going 1.25 miles. He will say 6 furlongs in. If he says 6 furlongs in and he gives a time of 1 minute and 10 in 2/5 or faster, that's much better for our pick. I'll say our pick because I'm a part of your team this morning. I'm going to say Catching Freedom is going to come down the lane and mow him down, the number 4 horse, Catching Freedom, and hopefully pay anywhere in that 10-1 range. Would be awfully happy. And I will say this, I don't know if you can wear out an app on your phone, but I'm certainly going to wear out my app because I'm going to be sending some cash in on Saturday afternoon.
All right.
There we go. We're officially a Catching Freedom family now. It has been decided here. We're waiting for the right furlongs in the right time, and we're going to make sure we're dialed in on this. Eddie, for those, outside of what we're going to see on the track there, maybe people, because I always get this question, people attending the Derby for their first time here, what's the biggest thing that people need to look forward to, and maybe the quick thing they need to avoid at the Kentucky Derby to have a good time if it's their first time?
I think the first time for people, is to get a chance to just really kind of see the sights, and the venue has really changed. Junior, they put $200 million into their new paddock, which it's past state of the art. I don't even know what the phrase is after that. It's just unbelievable setting, and the Twin Spires in the background, and they've really upgraded the venue. And I think that, if you're a people person, you don't even have to enjoy the wagering aspect of it. But I think most people love horses. So I think just to get a chance to come, it's a bucket list, because I think the majority of the people I see after the fact that go to the Derby for the first time, they all look at me and they just say, Edzo, how have I not done this before? And I'm like, yeah, I've been telling you for 15 years. Like, think about the last 15 years, you could have enjoyed yourself. So I think if you're a people person and you love spectacle and getting all dressed up, and people will be dressed to the nines, and the food is unbelievable here in Louisville. The parties, if you can get tickets to it, I think just the experience of walking around Churchill Downs, and just because obviously it's 150 years. Think about it. That's a long, long time, and I think it would be great for anybody to put that in their bucket list and enjoy that opportunity if they get it.
Man, I'm looking forward to that. I know we want to bring you back another time to even do more hockey, but let's finish. We have just a couple minutes to go. Outside of the series that have ended, I think 5 of them, only one by seed has not been chalk. I think that was the Avalanche and Jets. So how do you see, as these playoffs are progressing, do you see it continuing that way?
Yeah. I think the teams that have I wouldn't say there's any upsets to this point. Now, we do have a couple of huge Game 6 coming up. You got Vancouver and Nashville. Game 6 now, Vegas. Vegas had a 2-0 lead in the series. They won the first 2 games in Dallas. Dallas goes into Vegas and wins 2 games. Now they just win last night, so they're up going back to Vegas. That looks like it's going to be a Game 7. If it is, that's where my assignment will be on Sunday. So I'll go right from the Derby to Dallas, and that's the plan right now, is to work that Game 7. Boston-Toronto was interesting. Last year, the Bruins had the Florida Panthers on the ropes. They had them up 3-1. They lost the series after having the best regular season in the NHL history. Now they had Toronto up 3-1 in this series here. Toronto goes to Boston. They win Game 5. They're going back to Boston now for a Game 6. The pressure would be just absolutely enormous if Boston had to go back and play Game 7 against Toronto, because there's on those 2 franchises, you guys know, there's massive expectations. We haven't, Toronto. I played in Toronto for 3.5 years, and I loved every second of it. They haven't won since the early 60s, so we know what the expectations are there. So, but the next round's got a chance to be unbelievable. The New York Rangers-Carolina series, which is locked in the East, is going to be an unbelievable, entertaining series. So lots to look forward to in the National Hockey League playoffs.
No doubt. An incredible home stretch coming up here, but getting a chance to chop it up and do some pucks and ponies with you, Eddie. Nothing better than that for us this week. So thank you so much for the time. Enjoy Derby weekend and the rest of the NHL postseason, and hopefully we'll talk to you again real soon.
Love to do it, guys. Nice to be with you again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eddie. Appreciate it.
I saw the wry smile on Claudia's
freedom.
face as he was bringing up.
More scared than anything. to GoJo and Golic. The New York Knicks apparently ready to risk it all for Devin Booker. That's according to sources who say the Knicks have been interested in Booker since 2020 when Leon Rose took over as team president. Rose was a former CAA player agent who represented Booker. Also, some other Knicks personnel prior to being hired by New York. New York would be willing, according to sources, to offer almost anything to pair Booker with Jalen Brunson, but a source from Devin Booker's camp who is intimately familiar with the situation told Phoenix Sports that rumors of there being interest from both parties is, quote, unequivocally false. And when you use big words like that, GoJo, you know he means business.
Usually seems like you got something you're trying to hide. This is the perfect weaponized form of Stephen A. Smith, by the way, because Stephen A. Smith infinitely plugged in, a guy who cut his teeth as an NBA reporter and still is very well sourced in those areas, but also understands the content game and what the people all want to hear. And Dad, post-mortem on this Suns team, we're ready to pick this thing apart now because it went about as bad in the postseason as you could have expected from a group that struggled to get on the court ever together during the season and ended up having the big slip late in the season. And so now, of course, we're all going to come over on a team that, listen, Bradley Beal and that contract looked like they're going to be prohibitive here. Kevin Durant certainly entering the twilight of his career like LeBron and Steph. And so we're going to look at Devin Booker as the young, talented one and say, which of these teams can we put you on? And man, oh man, the Knicks are going to be the universal solvent, I think, for a lot of these conversations this offseason, because now that Jalen Brunson has shown himself to be the dude and a bona fide superstar player there, we have actually gotten into the territory that we in sports talk have always wanted, Dad, is how can the Knicks attract a high-profile superstar? And the answer is find gold with the guy that you got from the Dallas Mavericks who they let walk out of the building in Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, listen, and find a team that's ready to break it up. And is that going to be the Suns? I mean, this starts with the owner, right? Matt Ishbia? I mean, how it's been talked about with him? I'm sorry?
Gesundheit. Matt Ishbia and what it's been talked about. Basically, people saying he's kind of been he's venturing into meddling owner territory. Is that basically the sense we've gotten?
Yeah, we're getting to that, but then it goes down to coach, where they get rid of Monty Williams and they hire Vogel last year, and is his job, going to be up, or they're going to be paying him as well, and then down to player. When you talk about getting a guy like Kevin Durant, and you expect that to put you over the top, you have the three of Durant and Booker and Beal was hurt most of the year, and then Beal was running the offense at times, Booker was running the offense at times. Nobody felt comfortable doing it. The bottom line is that since acquiring Durant in February 23, they're 6-9 in postseason action. They basically haven't gotten it done. And Booker has 3 more years on his deal, and I think the last year he's making $61 million. So just like we talked about with the Clippers, breaking up the older guys there, what they did, they destroyed themselves from possible moves that they could make. They're third highest in the payroll, roughly $260 million. That's players plus the tax, which is another, I think, $68 million that they're paying. So they're in a horrible, horrible position right now. So you wonder what the next move is going to be, and is that going to be dumping some of the top players?
It remains to be seen. Everyone in the Suns is saying that they believe they've got a window for this stuff. And Dad, I think that's the one thing we talk about a lot with these teams that have tried to microwave the super team idea in recent years. Now, you had Devin Booker and Kevin Durant there already, but bringing over Bradley Beal and kind of forming up this big three, you thought, all right, maybe we do give it time. Maybe you do give it more than a year. We've seen even with the best version of these big threes over the course of recent NBA history, they've needed a little bit of time to bake together. But you do wonder what that's going to look like for not only this crew, but also the head coach in Frank Vogel. And when Ishbia hired Vogel a year ago, it was a 5-year, $31 million deal after Monty Williams left and went to Detroit. And you would assume that would buy you some time, but we know how this works in NBA circles, Dad, even if Charles Barkley last night kind of pulled the card that you pulled yesterday, which is, man, this is on the players, not the coaches. I believe Charles's exact words were, the Lakers and Suns suck because of the players, not the coaches, which was a little surprising for me to hear from a former player, considering, the amount of love and the fraternity the coaches usually do a good job of keeping track of each other like that.
But I tend to mostly agree with him. We talk about this in all sports. Listen, this doesn't excuse coaches from not coaching well. Don't get me wrong. But, we sit there and we talked about what's one of the biggest arguments, Belichick Brady, right? Of what's the reason for it. And if something, people ask me about my years at Notre Dame and Jerry Faust being the head coach. Jerry Faust came from high school, Cincinnati Moeller. And listen, admittedly so, he was in over his head. He brought in high school coaches with him, and we didn't have very many good years. But people will say that, but then my retort is always, yeah, he struggled as a head coach, at that level, but we, the players, are on the field. We're the ones who can have the impact. No matter what the game plan is, beat the guy across from you. So to me, more of the onus always goes on to the players. And I feel that way in every sport. You're the one that's on the court, the ice, the grass, whatever, that can make it happen. And these coaches have coached in other places and have been successful. It's not like they forgot how to coach. I mean, look what's going on. You fire, the coach early on in Milwaukee, and it's not been much better at all with Doc Rivers, even though they look good, obviously, their last game. And the same thing with Phoenix. They lost with Monty last year. They lost with Vogel this year. So, yeah, I'm not big on throwing it on the coach and saying that's going to solve our issues. Is it part of it? Yes, I agree it's part of it. But I will always, to the day I die, put more of the onus on the players saying, you are on the court. You are the guy playing against another guy. Be better. That's my thought. You're out there with more control than the coach.
I agree, but the exact dynamic you just brought up is also why this happens. Like, I agree with you and Chuck in that the players are always most important, but you know what they are? Mostly indispensable, especially the good ones. You know what the coaches are? Largely expendable. And that's why they're the ones that get moved on from, because you've got to justify this somehow to your fan base. So that's the double-edged sword, Dad, of outside of a handful of coaches who appear to be a massive value add that we can even acknowledge and see as fans and analysts, everybody else just seems like, hey, we're shuffling the same group of names around a handful of jobs in the NBA every year. Every once in a while, a new one breaks through. But for the most part, when you are also the one that is comparatively less important overall to the outcome, you tend to be the one that's easiest to saw off when ownership has to justify to the fan base, hey, we're doing something.
Completely, 1,000% agree. I just caution fans to say, oh, they changed the coach, now all our issues are taken care of. Because that ain't it. That's not how it works. But they are, to your point, you are 1,000% correct. They are the most dispensable person that sits on the bench in really anywhere. So they're going to be the ones that go. But now Phoenix has to decide what route they're going to go. And how much they've hamstrung themselves, and what do you do to get out of that? Each sport is different in how they deal with their salaries, whatever caps that they have, whatever taxes they have, of how they need to get out, because we see it in every sport. There are some teams that just sell out for the title, everything else be damned. We saw the Rams do it, and it paid off for them, right? We've seen others do it as well, and we've seen others do it, and it doesn't pay off. It doesn't pay off in a big way, like Phoenix right now getting knocked out in the first round and not having the best year or a better year than you would expect, even though one of your trio was hurt in Beal. So sometimes, man, you sell out to get it done and you don't. And then it's like, okay, now how the hell do we get out of this?
I mean, if you're the Suns and you're looking for an actual fix and you want to keep this together and do buy into the idea that you've got a window, it seems like one pretty easy fix there is just get an actual point guard. It's something most of us have been screaming for the entire season, that this team decided to kind of just do a choose-your-own adventure with whoever was going to initiate and distribute. And spoiler alert, they had a bad time. They French fried when they were supposed to pizza, and so that could be a good route to go there to, at the very least, try and maximize that. If you are Matt Ishbia and you say, hey, you know what? I want to avoid the knee-jerk reaction and try and finish this out with the group that we brought together.
Have you ever put French fries on your pizza? I have. It's wonderful.
Oh, yeah. I feel like that thing happens by accident all the time. It's like I don't put ketchup on my eggs, but sometimes on my plate, ketchup gets on my eggs. The same would go with French fries and pizza. You're going to have a good time then. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato here. And we're still basking in the afterglow of the NFL draft. And so with that in mind, we wanted to talk a little bit ball, and no one better to do it with than our buddy, my former roommate and teammate at Notre Dame, former NFL tight end, Kyle Rudolph, kind enough to join us now. He's also one of the co-founders of Olczyk, a great platform doing a lot of wonderful charitable work that you guys can check out there. There's a great package with Jimmy Darts and a trip to the Super Bowl in New Orleans coming up, a UFC package where you can meet Michael Chandler ahead of UFC 303 with him against Conor McGregor. So plenty of great stuff you can check out there at alltrue.com. But Rudy, good morning, man. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Always a pleasure to be on with the Golics. Looking forward to it.
Rudy, I feel like, we've had so much we want to get to. For anyone that doesn't know, Kyle spent over a decade in the NFL with the Minnesota Vikings, the team that drafted him, the New York Giants, finished up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and there's a lot of your former teams that have some interesting moves on the table right now. But I feel like I wouldn't be doing my journalistic duty if I didn't ask off the top how you and especially your wife, Jordan, are dealing with the newfound fame of having been all over Taylor Swift's internet coming off this last weekend where you guys were out at Patrick Mahomes' charity event with All True in Las Vegas, and now your wife has become a Swiftie phenomenon here. So how is she dealing with all this newfound fame?
She's doing well. It was funny. We woke up Sunday morning and obviously her phone had blown up with all the TikToks and Instagrams, and the thing that stuck out to me that's crazy, and obviously Taylor and Trav deal with it everywhere they go, 24/7, 365. I didn't see one person take a picture or record a video the whole time we were hanging out and talking and walking into the event, that everything that surfaced online the next morning. So, like I said, certainly they're used to it. It's old hat for them. For Jordan and I, we were like, again, usually we pose for pictures and know they're being taken. We had no idea any of those pictures or videos were taken, but it was an incredible event raising money for 15 of my homies, Patrick and Brittany's incredible foundation, doing incredible work in the Kansas City community, the Dallas community. You know how Jordan and I are with kids and being able to serve kids and to support what they're doing was a ton of fun. And then to be able to hang out, Travis and I, same high school class, both from Ohio. He went to school in Cincinnati. So known him for a long time. Getting to meet Taylor, I reminded her of her trip to South Bend in 2009 for practice. So we were talking about that a little bit. And she remembered that. The thing that she mentioned, obviously Golden Tate being from Nashville. That was something that came up. But yeah, just overall good time, a great weekend, and they raised a lot of money for a good cause.
It's one of those things, Kyle, where so many people will never get to meet a star like that. And sometimes you're a little antsy on meeting someone you know as a star, like how are they going to be as a person, because you never really get to see that. And by all accounts, you hear that she is just a lovely person. And obviously you and Jordan were right there, so you can give us firsthand, info to that.
Yeah, they always say you don't want to meet your hero. It's something that you hear all the time. Yeah. So it's like we hold these individuals in such high regard. And then sometimes you meet them and it's like, man, I wish I never would have met them because I thought they were so much cooler, so much nicer. And that couldn't be further from the case with Taylor. Just incredible. Obviously, Jordan got to spend more time talking to her, talking about Finn and Andy and their obsession. They sing her songs on recess and do performances. And, she just loved hearing it, was incredibly gracious and really lovely to talk to. Obviously, we got home and we've never been more popular with Finn and Andy than we were when they saw those pictures. So they're super excited. Tomorrow is dress up as your favorite singer or entertainer for school and Spirit Week at Catholic Schools Week. So obviously they'll be decked out in their Taylor Swift gear.
There we go. I was going to say you instantly became the coolest parents of the year right now. So enjoy that leverage for however long it lasts for you guys. But like you said, an incredible event that you guys were out there a part of. And certainly, you mentioned you and Jordan, the work you guys have always done with kids in Minnesota, your guys' time there at the Minnesota Masonic Children's Hospital and all that great stuff with Kyle Rudolph's end zone. It's been a great thing to see as a part of your career all throughout that way. But part of your career, you mentioned meeting some of your heroes, meeting the people that we see on the big screen. I've always heard you go to bat for Daniel Jones in New York, Giants quarterback that you spent a year with out there, and always heard you talk about how highly you think of him. So I want to know what you made yesterday. I saw reports from Daniel Jeremiah over at the NFL Network saying he believes that Drew Lock actually has a chance to come in and battle for the starting job in New York now that he's out there. What do you make of that, especially coming off a draft where they finally got Daniel a weapon?
I think just listening to Drew Lock's initial press conference when he was in New York, he certainly talked about how he understands this is Daniel's team, this is Daniel's job. But, ultimately competition is good for everyone. So I think if you're the New York Giants, you hope that Drew Lock comes in and continues to push Daniel. But knowing Daniel as well as I do, no one's going to push him harder than he pushes himself. No one wants to play a full season and get healthy, stay healthy, and return to the form that he was in 2 years ago when ultimately he went on the road and won a playoff game, which I know a lot of other quarterbacks that are making a lot of money that don't have road playoff wins under their belt as an NFL starting quarterback. But you mentioned the acquisition in the draft, going out and getting a guy like Malik Neighbors. I had gone on a couple shows pre-draft, just scratching my head as to why the Giants would try to trade up to draft a quarterback and not just take, you're going to get with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors both being there in the top 6. You're going to get one of them. So take the best receiver available. Give this guy a number 1 receiver for the first time in his career. And now if you're DJ, you got your guy. So, you get him the ball 150 times this year. Find ways to get him the ball. Make sure that, Malik Neighbors is your best friend over the next however many months getting ready for the season. And like I said, knowing DJ as well as I know him, that will be the case.
Again, he played 6 games last year, tore his ACL. Their coach, Brian Daboll, had said all offseason that when he's healthy, he's a starter. I do believe he's going to be – it's his job to lose. I don't think it's going to be an open competition. I think it's going to be his job, and if he doesn't perform well, then maybe Drew Lock gets the spot. Now, your former team, the team you spent most of your career with, and for those that may not remember, Kyle, his rookie year, made the Pro Bowl and was the Pro Bowl MVP and won a truck, if I remember correctly. I mean, what a way to start your career. There you go. Love that.
Right.
But we talk about Daniel Jones and getting a new receiver in a Malik Neighbors, and it's not like they had an unbelievable receiving core. Then you go to your team who pick up J.J. McCarthy. So now you have a young quarterback who, my God, talk about the cupboard's full. You're going to get Justin Jefferson on a deal at some point. You have T.J. Hawkinson at tight end. So talk about that from a young quarterback side going in with that kind of experience at the receiving position.
Yeah, and I think for Minnesota to be able to, I know they moved up 1 pick. They traded a 4th-round pick to move up 1 spot from 11 to 10 to get J.J. McCarthy, the guy that, a lot of people thought Minnesota might be trying to trade up into the top 5 to get. So you're able to sit there. You get him at 10. You don't have to give up 23 this year and a first next year, because in my opinion, that's the worst thing you can do. We're seeing it in Carolina right now. You get rid of all your draft capital to move up to take your guy, and then you can't put any young pieces around him. So for Minnesota to be able to stay there at 10, take J.J. McCarthy, and then still keep that other 1st-round pick to draft another player, it's a huge win for me. Now it's not as much of a gamble as unloading all your draft capital to move up and take who you think is your guy of the future. And you mentioned the cupboard being full, obviously having the best receiver in football. TJ Hawkinson coming off the injury, who knows when he'll be ready during the season, but ultimately he'll come back from the ACL, MCL injury. You'll have a great tight end. They just brought over Aaron Jones from the Packers, a guy who I've played against and watched play in our division for a long time, extremely talented out of the backfield. As a young quarterback, it will be a huge weapon for him to get the ball out of his hands quickly, to let him make plays in space. So in my opinion, not just drafting JJ McCarthy at 10, but then being able to get Dallas Turner at 17. You're taking arguably the best rusher in the draft coming from Alabama, who's produced Pro Bowler and All Pro one after another. So I think if you're Kwesi, it takes the pressure off the pick at 10, because you feel like you have a surefire guy at 17 as well, and you can make the gamble to try to find your quarterback of the future.
Rudy, how much of that gamble is also predicated on what they believe they have in Kevin O'Connell? I know you didn't play for him, but you gotten to know him there in Minnesota as the play caller. What is it about him and his offense that you think can help a guy like JJ, schematically come along faster than maybe some of these other quarterbacks?
Well, knowing Kevin as well as I do, there's nobody else, if you're a young quarterback, that you'd want to go play for than someone who's been in your shoes. He was a young quarterback that came into this league, ultimately was around Tom Brady for the beginning part of his career as a quarterback, and then ultimately has been around some of the best head coaches in our game, coming off of that Washington staff with Shanahan and McVay and all of those guys. So, you're immediately thrown into a system with a young, relatable head coach who is going to put you in every situation to be successful. I do know that, when Kevin was working with Kirk, it's a completely different offense. You have a guy who you can really put all of the pressure and responsibility on week in and week out. Kevin will not be able to do that with a rookie quarterback. He will have to simplify things and make it so he can use all of those weapons that we were just talking about. Whereas, when you have a 12-year veteran quarterback, you can give him a little more freedom, a little more responsibility. But certainly JJ coming into this offense and playing under someone like Kevin, it certainly sets him up for success.
I'm glad you mentioned Kirk Cousins, because I wanted to go there next. Obviously, he's part of the big offseason acquisition by the Atlanta Falcons, and then they go out and draft Michael Penix Jr. with the 8th overall pick there. How surprised were you by that? Like, if you're a veteran in the Falcons locker room and you see these offseason moves from the team, what's going through your mind?
Well, I mean, I think at first, if you're a veteran in that locker room, you have the 8th overall pick, you're pretty excited about the roster you have. Adding Kirk at this point in his career, prior to the Achilles injury, was playing about as good as football anyone at that position. And, you're trying to win right now. And you could add a player at 8 who could make an immediate impact on your organization right now. So, definitely would be a little frustrated with the move, but also at the same time, if Atlanta thinks Michael Penix Jr. is their guy of the future, they came out and said it. We feel like we have our guy now for the next couple of years, and we have our guy for the future. So we've seen that work really well time and time again in Green Bay. Everybody was like, why are you drafting Aaron Rodgers in the first round when you have Brett Favre? And then why are you drafting Jordan Love when you have Aaron Rodgers? And here we are now, a team that will go on their third decade of having their quarterback, being someone who's played with 14 or 15 of them throughout the course of my career, and 8 of them in Minnesota. I know what it's like not to have your guy. So, you can't blame them for going out and setting themselves up for the future as well.
You look at when you came in the league, 13 years ago or something like that. It's amazing how time flies. From a rookie, and I know you had a good rookie year, your breakout season was that next year, but going in as a rookie, as we have a whole new batch of rookies coming into the NFL, what's the biggest thing for them as their fans try and watch these rookies acclimate themselves to the NFL that they need to kind of be aware of?
Well, I think it's a completely different era of media now. Like when I think back to my rookie year, first of all, we didn't have an off season. So we were locked out until training camp started in late July. So there was no rookie mini camp. There were no OTAs. There was no mandatory mini camp for the veterans. So, for me, my first off season was kind of just the only really media we had was NFL Network and ESPN covering the lockout essentially. And now in today's world, it's 24/7, 365. Your every move is scrutinized and analyzed. So I think just as a young player in this league, the biggest day of your life was the day you were drafted, the day you signed with a team. But ultimately, that's just the beginning. The work really starts now. And if you want to stay in the league, well, it's the best of the best. The best players in college are the guys that stay in the NFL. And just because you were, an all-conference player or an All-American in college doesn't mean that you're ultimately going to have success at the next level. So, it truly is this 24/7, 365 cycle of media and attention. But as a young player, you can't let that distract you from what ultimately will keep you in the league and on the field. And, that's going out there and working and getting better every day. And, it's a cutthroat industry. They're trying to replace you day in and day out, year in and year out. And ultimately, if you get caught up in that 24/7, 365 news, media, attention cycle, you're going to be on the outside looking in.
Got to keep the main thing the main thing. There is no doubt, and you did that successfully for a very long time. We mentioned some Minnesota here on the football field, Rudy. It's the NBA playoffs. I didn't want to get you out here. We're talking a little hoops. I mean, for anyone that doesn't know, Kyle was a great high school basketball player as well and was part of a lot of the conversations we had in the Notre Dame locker room about if we could put together a starting five with our football team that could beat our scholarship basketball team, which, of course, we always thought we could. You were in Minnesota when Karl Anthony Towns got drafted number 1 overall there. It's obviously been a very up and down road at different points for him, but seeing this Minnesota Timberwolves team now and seeing his development firsthand for so many years, how impressed are you by the team that they have now managed to put together there?
It's been a ton of fun to follow throughout the course of my career in Minnesota. I went to a ton of games, a season ticket holder. Quite honestly, early on, I was a season ticket holder to go watch the other teams. It's LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade. These guys are coming in town to play the Timberwolves, and that's who you want to go watch. Ultimately, we didn't have the greatest of teams early on in my career in Minnesota, but just being a diehard basketball fan, I loved going to the games. You get to know the guys, so then you want to support them. You root for them. So then, we draft Karl number 1 overall. I've gotten to know Karl pretty well over the years. We had youth camps together at the same school in Minnesota. Got to know his family. Karl Sr. is quite the character, one of the best humans I've ever been around. So got to shout him out when we're talking about Karl Jr. And it's like, when you look at this team and the team that they've put around Karl now as they've built this, you can't talk about Karl without talking about Anthony Edwards. And, Karl is one of the most skilled basketball players, especially for his size, that I've ever seen. I mean, he won the 3-point contest as a 7-footer. So just incredibly skilled basketball player. But then when you pair him with a guy like Anthony Edwards, in order to have a successful franchise in the NBA, you have to have that alpha of all alphas. And Karl is an extremely skilled basketball player, but Ant is that alpha in the locker room, that alpha on the court, that alpha across the entire league. It's been a ton of fun to watch Ant come into that locker room and really elevate Karl's game to a level that it hadn't been before. And I can't wait. I'm going to Game 3 next Friday. So be back in the Twin Cities, getting to see our Timberwolves take on the Nuggets. And it's been a ton of fun over the last, 5-6 years to now be going to games to watch the Timberwolves and not the team that they're playing against.
It really is an incredible transformation there, too. I'm sure they're going to be fired up to see you back there on the sidelines in Minnesota, Rudy. We're fired up to have you here this morning, brother. Thanks so much for the time, buddy. We'll see you around here soon, all right?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
and Golic with a reminder that right now you can bet on the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson July 20th fight at DraftKings Sportsbook. But you don't have to wait for that because we also have boxing action this weekend at DraftKings Network starting at 5 p.m. The guys on Morning Combat will preview the evening's PBC Fight Night card. It'll be a whole night of boxing at the DraftKings Network. Tune in Saturday starting at 5 for Morning Combat and 6 p.m. for the PBC prelims at DKN. And speaking of fights, we have a couple potential quarterback fight battles. Hopefully no punches will be thrown, but you guys get the idea. Take a listen to NFL Network's Daniel Jeremiah as he weighs in on the quarterback situation with the Giants.
And then at 6, we had said through the whole process, I don't believe that they are a J.J. McCarthy team. They are a Drake May team. They're going to try like crazy to get from 6 to 3. If they can't get Drake May, I think they're going to be comfortable. And it's not just with Daniel Jones. I believe Drew Lock has got a really good shot of winning that job. He's going to be in the mix there.
Jones versus Lock. Who you got, Gojo?
Yeah, I'm probably going to side with the incumbent on this one, Dad. And listen, Drew Lock, during his time in, a variety of stops between the start of his career in Denver, certainly the stint in Seattle as well, where people were wondering about him versus Geno Smith. He's a guy who is, coming in with NFL starting experience, which is rare in this league for a lot of backups. It's going to make him a prize going forward. But I think when healthy, Dad, we just talked to Kyle Rudolph about this, who is as big a defender of Daniel Jones as I've met, a guy who spent time with him in that locker room and has seen the physical gifts on display as well as the leadership capability, all the things he already knows in that locker room. And so I think for a team in New York, Dad, also that made a significant investment at Daniel, they're in the second year of that and really the last year of significant investment there. There is something to wanting to now with an offense that's going to have a deep threat, find out even more information about this guy in a year where you're trying to make a big decision.
Yeah, I think this is Daniel Jones' job to lose. When we had Kyle on, I said the same thing. Again, just 6 starts last year, rehabbing that knee. Do I think he's the future quarterback continuing on with this team? No, I do not. I don't think Drew Lock is either. I don't think they have him right now. When we're 4 years from now, 3 years from now, I think we're going to be talking about a different quarterback. But I think right now it's going to be Daniel Jones. He'll have I don't think it's an open competition. I think it's his job to lose, and we'll see if he loses it or not. It's been okay for him. 62 touchdowns, 40 interceptions, 64% completion. But a lot of us questioned the pick when it was made. And at times it looked like he was answering those questions, and at times it looked like he wasn't. So ultimately, I don't think he's going to be the quarterback there down the road, but I do think he's going to be the quarterback or have every opportunity to be the lead guy this year for them, yes.
It is funny, the differing personalities in this, because from the outside, Daniel Jones just seems like the younger, stronger, more athletic version of Eli Manning, the khakis, very nondescript in the way that he presents, versus Drew Lock, who's been the guy singing Jeezy on the sidelines since he was in Denver. Like, he comes in, especially off of last season, right? Late in the season, he had that game-winning drive against the Philadelphia Eagles that was really emotional for him getting back out on the field. Like, he's not short on confidence, even at this point in his career. But, Dad, I'm ultimately with you, and I think you're right. I've had questions about Daniel Jones' fit in New York. I am very curious, though, because since this new regime has come in and since Brian Daboll got there, the year that Kyle talked about where they got a road playoff win and they surprised everyone in year one in the regular season, it was largely an offense that had done what we've seen a lot of teams do. Multiple tight end sets, focus on ground and pound. Saquon Barkley really the star of that show, and Daniel Jones making timely plays, including with his feet. Last year, there was this idea, hey, now we've got to develop that next step. But when Darren Waller was the only guy that you brought in, that never felt overly realistic for that team. Now with Malik Neighbors, I'm interested to see what Brian Daboll does in morphing this offense with an offensive line that, listen, still had some questions. They're waiting to see if Evan Neal's going to come online, their former top pick out of Alabama as well. But can that combination of speed and perhaps improved protection now be the thing that allows them to change the shape of this offense enough to keep Daniel upright a lot more often, to keep him healthy a lot more often, and to put him in potentially better positions in space to use those athletic gifts, because he is at his best when he is one of the focal points of your offensive rushing attack as well.
Yeah, he is. You lost, obviously, Saquon Barkley. who averaged under 4 yards to carry. So it's not like he was absolutely unbelievable, but still, we'll see what kind of a running game that they get. And he's got to be happy they finally do have, more weapons to use for him. So as I said, time will tell. I think he'll be the guy until he's not. And that'll be by bad play at some point if that happens. And then down the road, they look for a new quarterback.
Yeah, they're likely going to be looking for a new quarterback there, but this is the last best chance Daniel Jones will have, where there's finally at least going to give him an opportunity to be successful. And by all accounts, sounds like a great dude. You want to see every guy get the best possible opportunity. We know it wasn't that necessarily to start his tenure in New York, but he'll have that now. Same kind of situation, Claudia, for your Patriots here, and this is another place where this offseason they bring in a veteran in Jacoby Brissett, who now is going to be in charge of helping another young quarterback along the way.
What all New England fans want to see is a new quarterback. Like, we've seen Brissett. I get it. It's a veteran presence. Can sort of help Drake May, who they did stick and pick at number 3 overall. However, as media does, they asked Brissett about what he thought about the quarterback battle at a cheering event yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
That's all out of my control, so I don't really worry about that. I'm excited to have him on the team and the other guys as well that we drafted and picked up. I think it's going to be good. Competition brings out the best in all of us, so I'm excited about that part.
And May had spoken about this as well right after he got picked up, saying, I'm just excited to be here. I'm excited to learn from a veteran. So both sides are saying what they're supposed to say, GoJo. I'm curious what either of you think. And I guess, Senior, I'll go to you first. Do you think there's going to be much of a quarterback battle? And do you think that maybe Drake May should sit behind a veteran and watch him a bit before he gets a go?
This is a completely different situation than the Giants, where Drew Lock has come in. Nobody thinks he's going to be the answer. This is about Daniel Jones. Can he continue to be the guy in New York? And I think the odds are against that, but he's going to get that chance to do it. Here, it's a bad team in New England trying to rebuild, and you have drafted when you draft a quarterback this high, it is your franchise quarterback, your supposed quarterback of the future, though we see a number littered throughout the NFL that are now backups somewhere else who have been first-round picks. And we had 6 taken in this first round, and that's going to happen again. But for right now, as soon as Drake May looks viable enough to play on an NFL field, he should be the starter. Maybe they'll install him day one as the starter. This is your guy. So as soon as you feel the lights aren't too bright, his eyes aren't too wide, and he's picking up the offense, he should be your starter. Jacoby Brissett should be there if they need him in the beginning while Drake May's getting to that point, or then be kind of the mentor behind him, and if Drake May were to struggle or to get injured, to step in. This is going to be Drake May's team. It's just a matter of when.
So you're not worried at all then, because a lot of what we hear is, well, look at what happened to Mac Jones, which to that I always say it's different, because Mac Jones did a lot at Bama with a lot more around him. Drake May didn't have as much help. But that's the argument is, are they going to ruin him in New England, GoJo?
Well, I was going to say, what happened to Mac Jones was that they made a defensive coordinator and a special teams coach as offensive coordinator his second year and undermined all the development that happened there. Like, this is, again, the environment thing. And I do think we've talked about the Patriots roster being deficient offensively. They've helped improve in some areas through the draft in this offseason, but there's still a ways to go. I do think, given the fact that the organization loves Jerod Mayo, he's probably going to get a pretty good-sized runway to make this work. I don't think you have to rush it. Like, if you get in and Drake May's really not ready right now, and some of the concerns people had about how raw he was or working through progressions or tight windows like Belichick pointed out, you can afford to let him chill, because Jacoby Brissett, man, what a value. I mean, we saw a couple years ago what he did in Cleveland for that team. He is maybe the ultimate backup quarterback weapon in the NFL right now in terms of vibes, veteran leadership, and what he can actually still provide you on the field. So I don't think you've got to rush any of this with Drake May. I think we talk about all these positions. We've said, hey, J.J. McCarthy probably doesn't have to rush right away there. Bo Nix, it's probably going to be a little bit more sped up because of how dire things are in Denver. I think New England can afford to do this right and make sure they give their young rookie quarterback the absolute best chance to succeed.
GoJo and Golic. It's do or die time. Bucks at Pacers, 6:30. Both Giannis and Dame doubtful for tonight. Pacers 7.5-point favorites there. And then you have the Knicks and 76ers at 9 p.m. And we know it won't start at 9 p.m., so it's going to be tough to stay up for that one. Philly, the 3-point favorite. But of course, the headline here is the fact that Giannis and Dame are both doubtful. And that's tough for a Bucks squad that came into this, again, as one of the favorites with the heavy hitters at the top of the board, and a team that did have depth, but when two of your best players are injured, or doubtful, I should say, for this game, that's tough to bounce back from, GoJo.
I will say, though, we learned earlier this year, I believe with Joel Embiid, that doubtful can always change very quickly the day of an event. So I'd keep an eye on that one. You know, Doc Rivers was saying after the last game they were both very, very close. They were going to work out yesterday on court to try and see if they could make it back. And, Dad, this could be one of those junctures because your other guys and Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis went out and made it happen. They gave you a chance to stay alive in this series when most of us were heaping dirt on you. And so now if you can get even one of those guys back in some capacity and try and force this thing even further down the road, you can try and take advantage of the fact that you are the team with comparatively more experience here and see if you can get this Indiana squad a little bit rattled as all of a sudden this gets tense down the stretch.
It's interesting, before Game 5, Doc had said that Lillard did no basketball activities while Giannis only did some light shooting. But after Game 5, in the postgame, he said they were very, 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 very close. So, I don't know, man. Again, Giannis with the calf, Dame with the Achilles. Those are some tough injuries to even try and come back and gut them out. They really are, as opposed to joint injuries where I think you could try and gut those out a little bit more, the way that Embiid is doing, wearing the knee brace and such. So I think it's going to be tough, but they've shown they can have other guys, in this case Bobby Portis, who came back after his apology of getting thrown out the game before after 7 minutes, to come back and have himself a monster game, and that's obviously what they're going to need. Pacers need to close this thing out while they are ahead in the better players on the court situation. They're having a gold out tonight at the arena, so that should look cool anyway. But they need up 3-2. They can end this series. They need to jump on them quick, right? They need to show them, just try and jump on them quick. I know you try and do that every game, but when you have an elimination game and the team that's going to be eliminated starts to see it get away from you, like we saw with Miami last night, it can really take wind out of your sails when you know you're going to be going home if you lose.
Yeah, you need an abandon all hope ye who enter kind of start to this game to really demoralize. Because I'm with you, Dad. I think Luka's also fascinating to talk about when you talk about the different nature of these injuries. Because for joint injuries, the pain's there. You kind of know what you're dealing with. Nothing's going to sneak up on you with that for those guys. And you saw them manage it. It was pain management throughout the course of that game. With an Achilles, with a calf, and with any real muscular injury, it's like going through a minefield where, it feels good, wrong cut. Either something pops, something grabs, and all of a sudden now you're thinking about it. And I think that mental part of injury is always such a big factor in these. And so that'll be the ultimate factor in this game. And even if you get those guys back, it's what we've always talked about with these star players. If you're getting someone back at half power or 3/4 power, and they're not even sure how much power they have going into this game, and you're one of the role players who bases your existence off what the stars are doing and off their gravity, it makes it really difficult to go out there and execute for Doc Rivers and for the rest of this team. So fascinated to watch that group there. But Claudia, this postseason so far has felt like the Jalen Brunson and really Anthony Edwards show. I'd say these have been the two most popular names that we've talked about this postseason. And so now for the Knicks, it's pretty interesting. Like, we talked a lot from the 76ers perspective the other day, but the Knicks had a chance to really put a nail in the coffin and ended up losing at home to this same Sixers team that they had gone on the road to Wells Fargo and with their crowd helped kind of embarrass in their home arena. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of effort they can muster as they head back on the road.
Yeah, so Knicks leading the series 3-2, but like you said, they have to bounce back from that Game 5 loss, which they probably should have won, and that was all despite Jalen Brunson dropping 40 in the game. So here's what he had to say about the team bouncing back heading into this one.
We're going to have confidence regardless. It's not the time to hang our head, no matter what the situation is. So we know that they're a tough team. It's a tough environment. We got to go in there just ready to play, do what we do, and just be ready for a battle.
The man looks tired, Senior. He just like
Listen.
the state of New York on his shoulders. The dude looks tired.
This is to me been the most fun series to watch because it's been the most physical. Brunson doing so much, Embiid limping around, Maxey playing out of his mind. But again, we talk about, Ant-Man and Brunson. What Maxey has done, and for the 76ers, he has the most points by a Sixer player in a win to stave off elimination. He passed Hall of Famer Allen Iverson, who had 44 points in Game 7 against Milwaukee in 0-1. Again, Maxey had 46. He has been unbelievable to watch. But it's amazing to me that some of the headlines in this game, Mike, are that the 76ers ownership, which included a former minority owner, Michael Rubin, who runs the Fanatics now, got some issues of his own, they have bought 2,000 tickets to give to first responders and healthcare workers and such to try and not let Knicks fans get these tickets. Dawn Staley, the great women's college basketball coach, tweeted out, "I need Wells Fargo full of Sixers fans. Season ticket holders, don't sell your tickets to the Knicks fans. I repeat, do not sell your tickets to Knicks fans." I mean, this is amazing for someone, myself, who played most of my pro career in Philly and know how fanatical those fans are, to have this being done by a Philadelphia ownership group to keep opposing fans from taking over the arena blows my mind. I am amazed by this.
I am too, and I'm trying not to just fully ride the emotional wave on this, but this feels like we're getting to Game 7, right? The fact that Tyrese Maxey was able to go do that in the Garden in a game where Joel Embiid, I think we said, had a triple-double, but only 19 points in that game, didn't have necessarily that output. You don't think Joel Embiid's heard a little bit about what he had to say the last time after the Knicks fans invaded Wells Fargo? What people have said about him in general this postseason? As he's been out there once again grinding through injury. And I got reminded last night watching the Mavs game, they talked about it. They said Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic have been the second highest scoring duo in the NBA this postseason, behind Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. Like, for all of the talk about the Knicks, Maxey and Embiid, and especially for the first 3 games of this season, Embiid's been getting buckets still and battling through a lot of this. And so a lot like Luka last night walking into the Mavs game saying, I got to do better, I got to be better and hold up my end of the bargain for Kyrie Irving. I'm sure Joel Embiid, the competitor that he is, walking back into his home arena, feels some type of way about how the last couple of games have gone for him. And Dad, I won't be stunned if we get a 30-plus point game from Joel Embiid in this one that sends it back to the Garden for Game 7.
I agree. Mike, Philly fans. You think they're going to initially boo Embiid because of what he said about them? And listen, they are not above. Other cities have done it as well. But in Philly, they are not above booing their own. That's for sure.
No, I think it could be some ironically loud cheers, but I think this is a game early where Philadelphia's got to come out early. And Dad, you've talked about this with that crowd, and no one knows this better. This is why I feel so confident in this, because no one knows that crowd better than Joel. Like, no one has been as in tune with being a Philadelphia. Like, him and Bryce Harper really seem to understand what makes that town tick in a way that very few people do. And so you don't think that they're going to be shot out of a cannon. I mean, Tyrese Maxey's already a human cannonball. So they're going to be shot out of a cannon to start this game to try and make sure, hey, let's get the crowd on our side early on here. And then let's make sure we're feeding the big guy early. I won't be stunned when that's the case, and I won't be stunned when we head back to MSG. To your point, Claudia, maybe Jalen Brunson is finally starting to get a little bit worn down by all this. This is a Knicks team that all year long has pushed these guys. We've seen them in blowouts, playing 40-plus minutes in a game because Tibbs is just that guy. And so it'll be fascinating to see. Now, all of a sudden, if you can start to make everybody sweat, because we were ready for Coronation Day last night, or 2 nights ago in New York. I was ready to put a fork in the 76ers, and Tyrese Maxey had other ideas, and now they've got a great opportunity coming up here tonight, Game 6 at Wells Fargo, with, we said, Michael Rubin buying a bunch of tickets, trying to, I think, mask all the fun, not so fun stuff that's going on with Fanatics by saying, look, we're helping sell out the arena. We're giving these tickets to first responders. It's all great. We love it. Coming up next, something we don't love. Tiger Woods' new clothing line next. All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories send you into the rest of the day. As always, download, subscribe, rate, and review our show. Leave it a 5-star rating. Check it out Monday through Friday live here at 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. And if you can't do that, then check out the best of from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. And if you can't do that, then check out us and a lot of our great guests here. Our thanks to Eddie Olczyk, covering Kentucky Derby for NBC Sports. Obviously does a great job covering the NHL for Turner as well. And our buddy Kyle Rudolph, former Minnesota Vikings, New York Giants, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers tight end, for stopping by to take a look at Daniel Jones' future in the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings draft haul, and plenty of other great stuff. Check that out wherever you get your podcast, or available right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. Guys, let's get to this. I think I can speak for all of us when I say, when we first found out that Tiger Woods was leaving Nike and getting ready to start his own clothing line, we were all pretty excited. Tiger Woods and his Sunday red uniform had always been a huge part of sports. It had been part of the lore, and something got everyone hot and bothered. And so when we found out that the brand was going to be called Sunday Red, we're like sick, leaning into it, can't wait. Sign me up for this. The actual rollout has left something to be desired, Dad. Tiger Woods Sunday Red debuted its line yesterday and had no red in it. The website that is actually Sunday Red, all 3 separate words, and features Tiger Woods' strange tiger logo that we've talked about in the past that we think might have missed the mark, and a shirt that only really approaches salmon and not actual red on the website for the initial launch. Now, it sounds like the red collection, the All Things Red line, is an upcoming release that'll be out later on, but Dad, initially, I feel underwhelmed by all of this. How do you feel?
Yeah, you would like to have seen it right out of the gate, but listen, I'm not a marketing person. There's probably a reason, not to say that every reason or every decision is the right one. There's probably a reason for doing this and delaying on the actual red. So there is actual red that is going to come out. I don't mind the logo so much. And I also like that the logo, I think on the long sleeve shirts or the sweaters, are in the middle of the chest instead of, on the one side. I kind of do like that. But yeah, I would imagine there are more than a few people. Listen, it's an opinion thing. I would imagine there are more than a few people who are a little disgruntled that there was no red right now when they shop. If you go through it, I'm going through the inventory. Yes, there is no red on the hoodies, the t-shirts, the long sleeve shirts, the polos, but we do know it is going to come out eventually.
Guys, it's PR. We're talking about it, right? Everybody's talking about it now, to where we found out that he was coming out with clothing, so we knew maybe we wouldn't be as inclined to check it out now, but now we're talking about it because there's no red. So I think it's quite smart, to be honest. He knows what he's doing.
I get it. With the part as I'm not sure is going to be as smart as the fact that it's massively overpriced relative to the rest of the market. $120 polos, $200 sweatshirts. All for, again, something that out the gate. I don't know. Claudia, I understand it because we've watched fast food companies do this for years, right? You take away the McRib for a little bit, and then you tease that it's coming back, and you see what the interest is like, and then you bring it back, and everyone's talking about it, and the marketing cycle does absolutely work there. But, Dad, for something that, I don't know, between the logo and the fact that Tiger Woods isn't on top of the world anymore in terms of his golf prowess, I do wonder if people are going to be as willing to overspend just because it's Tiger and golf, and they want to feel a little bit of that magic.
The lowest selling shirts I see are the t-shirts for $70. The highest selling thing are the hoodies for $200. But man, you're right. Some of these polos, the highest selling polo, I think, is the Cameo polo, $175 for a polo. Man, that is. But you know what? It's going to sell incredibly well because there are enough people out there who are going to spend and buy it.
I guess I'll be interested to see, because golf apparel is also a really competitive market with a lot of players in it as well. But Tiger marketing this as athluxury and not athleisure, showing that price definitely reflects that. Speaking of new prices for things, Claudia, let's get to that. We had an interesting bee situation yesterday for the Diamondbacks that's now culminated in the beekeeper getting his own playing card.
I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. Yeah, but you mentioned it. There's a swarm of bees at Chase Field, delayed the Tuesday night game between the Dodgers Diamondbacks 2 hours, so they had to call in an expert, Matt Hilton, a local beekeeper, remove the bees. And then he got to throw out the game's ceremonial first pitch. So this led to him, as you can see, as if he just saved the world or something. He's out here like waving at the fans, if you can't see, with the full bee uniform on. So Topps gave him his own card, the 2024 Matt Hilton Topps card, number 145. Put the card on sale for 24 hours, only $8.99. So they weren't going crazy Tiger Woods prices here. But I'm sorry, you need to find this video if you're not watching right now, because this dude was preparing for this moment his whole life. GoJo.
Got to throw out the ceremonial pitch after that too. Like, Dad, big moment for beekeepers here. Every once in a while, I think we talk about the bees, basically the bee population going down and worrying about all the things they do for the environment. But when they're together in mass like that, scary as hell. I don't mess with bees. And so I'm glad this man was here and ready for his moment.
So also it's about Topps. It's about a company jumping on a situation immediately, right? How quickly do you try and capitalize on something? So he's got the whole bee outfit on for those who aren't seeing it on TV, who may listen on the podcast. He's got the hat part off and he's got his arms up, and that's the picture. And on the card, it has some, what does it say? Be afraid, be very afraid. Topps has also released special autographed editions, including, and I want to know what this one would go for, including a gold version of which only one was printed. We know how crazy people go when obviously baseball stars, you find that limited edition and it goes for millions of dollars. There's one gold version of a autographed edition of this that was printed. And the regular one's selling for $8.99. I would like to know what this one would go for. I would be stunned
$15.99
if it's much more than that.
I'm excited for 40 years down the road, some dad to be clearing out his garage with his son, and his son looks over and pulls out this gold beekeeper card and says, "Papa, who is this?" And he sees dad just wipe tears away from his eyes, recounting the night in Arizona where the beekeeper helped save baseball for a group of rowdy fans. It's going to be a beautiful moment that I can't wait for. Not nearly as beautiful as the third, though, Claudia. Emerson Lazia, our dear sweet friend who was filling in for you yesterday, made an interesting facial hair choice, and now we all get to talk about it.
Well, if this picture gets out, then some kid is going to ask his papa what happened, and he won't have an answer, because I don't know what the hell went on here while I was gone. We have a wonderful woman down the hallway who gives haircuts, and I think this is what happened. If you're not watching, it's Hulk Hogan. I mean, it's Emerson Lazia. He gave himself a biker mustache, and I think he thinks he looks good. His wife was not pleased, though. Guys, are we surprised at that?
No.
So,
Listen.
Dad, you're new to the facial hair game, so let me explain. When you grow out a beard usually, or a lot of facial hair, what happens when you're getting ready to shave it off is it's fun to take it off in pieces. My most famed one is one time I did, it's called the monkey tail. You take it down from here and you just loop it around the goatee and then you shave everything else off so it looks like you got a little monkey tail coming down from the top. But anyone who's ever had facial hair for a long time has done some version of this. And so going with the handlebar mustache, I think, is usually one of the tried and true ones. And to be honest, not a bad look for Emerson. I thought he should have kept it.
Well, as soon as your partner, your spouse, whoever is in the one in your life doesn't like it, it's probably not going to stay. There are times before I started this beard where I would, wait a while before I would shave, and then there was one time it was kind of coming in, and I shaved the whole beard, and I left the mustache, and I walked out and showed your mother, and all she did was laugh. And she laughed hysterically. And then pointed immediately back to the bathroom for me to go shave the mustache off, to which I promptly did. So then I did not start the actual beard until COVID, when we were, me, you, and Trey Wingo were trapped in my basement for 4 hours every morning, finishing out a morning show for 3 years at ESPN, and finished up the last 6 months or so there. And I started it there, and because it mixed in with some of the gray, my wife actually said it started to look good. Nothing about Emerson's face or hair looks good.
I thought it looked okay.
He needs to...
I thought it looked all right.
Yeah, well... Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah.